following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Rieger getting traded to Minnesota changes nothing.
6'4" guys running 4.4s. These guys don't grow on trees, and a lot of times I'm willing to bet on, especially long term, on the freak athlete.
You don't ever want to overreact to what guys look like in preseason. There's been a ton of preseason all-stars that never make rosters or never pan out. Good morning, Belly Up Fantasy Live. There it is. Game time. Let's go. Hit the ground running. How's everybody doing out there? I'm Chase Thornton coming to you from the Mott and Bailey Basement Bar. With me, as per usual, Kevin Wilson there down there in Texas. How you doing, Kevin?
We are doing good down here, and as we talked just before we came on the air, we got sunny skies out here, and currently 58 degrees, headed towards 70. So life is good at the present time.
All right. So for the rest of us out there, we can look on with that and with envy right now. But actually, It's not too bad up here. Like we said, it's 40s. It's sunny. Driveway's clearing off. We're getting rid of some of the snow. So better times are ahead. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, at least up here in the Great White North. So welcome in, everybody. Yeah. Lots going on this week. We're kind of in what I like to call the dead zone almost of the NFL offseason. Now, typically there is no offseason for the NFL anymore with media, social media, and 24-hour networks for the league and other sports networks and everything else going on. But we've kind of passed that initial wave of free agency. And then we had kind of the aftershocks, and I realize I'm mixing metaphors there, but everybody gets the point. And so now we're kind of waiting for the draft. And there's a few stragglers out there. There'll be some guys that sign between now and the draft. There may be some trades between now and the draft involving draft picks for this season. We're all anticipating or waiting on, say, the Aaron Rodgers trade. We're all waiting to see what happens with Lamar Jackson, for instance, and we'll talk about him later. There are some other names out there that are still drifting around that we're waiting on. But for the most part, this begins kind of a quiet period here. The month or so before the big excitement is over. The tampering period kind of kicks off the frenzy, and it's about a week or two, and then you get about a month before the draft hits. And obviously all the excitement is talking about the draft, but in terms of moves, we're kind of in a dead zone. But we have had a couple of moves, like we said in the last week here. And so I thought today we wanted to start off to talk about a couple of those moves, some of the biggest names that moved in the past week here and what they're going to mean from a fantasy standpoint, not just for themselves, but for the team around them and maybe going forward dynasty wise. First move we want to talk about this morning, everybody, is the Jets trading Elijah Moore to the Cleveland Browns. Now, the move is the Jets get Cleveland's second round pick, which is number 42 overall, while Cleveland gets Eli Moore and the Jets' third round pick, number 74. Now, if you remember correctly, Cleveland's first round pick this season went to Houston as part of the Deshaun Watson trade. They traded, 76 first round picks. They don't have a first round pick till our children are, graduated
in college.
Right. But now they've traded their second round pick away to New York as well. So that number 74 pick in the third round becomes Cleveland's top pick in the draft this year. Eli Moore will join, obviously, Amari Cooper, who had a great season last year for the Browns, even with Jacoby Brissett and a vastly diminished, less than stellar Deshaun Watson thrown to him. And Donovan Peoples-Jones, who is a young receiver still, I believe he's only 24 still, has a lot of upside as well. And had actually a pretty good year last season. But he joins them as like their third wide receiver threat or second or third wide receiver threat, kind of a slot guy. And also then David Njoku and the fabulous Nick Chubb in the backfield. It leaves the Jets with picks number 42 and 43, back-to-back picks now in the second round this season. So first thing I want to talk about, just from the Browns standpoint, is this a trade you like? And whose value do you think is affected most by this on the Browns? Is it Moore? Does his value rise? Does he draw away from Cooper or DPJ? What is your take fantasy wise on Moore to the Browns?
Well, it all depends if Deshaun Watson comes anywhere close to being Deshaun Watson. I don't think Cooper, he's the number one receiver. Nothing happening to him. And as you mentioned, he might be a 2 wide receiver. He might be even a 3. And so he's going to have to, because I'm looking at his numbers. He's been in the league 2 years. Most catches he's ever had is 43. Mm-hmm. That is not a number 2 wide receiver. And of course, he's had the Jets, quarterback,
right.
Puddle back there. So a second round pick seems like kind of a lot to me to give up for him. But if they like him, you make your move. And if Deshaun Watson is Watson, then he might, because he had 43 and then 37. He might combine those 2 numbers in one season. So
right.
for a second round, if that in fact happens, then we're really talking an excellent, choice on the Browns' part. But I'm going to have to see some meshing going on there before
right.
I'm putting any kind of, fantasy stock
right
into Elijah Moore. To me, if you've got him in fantasy, of course you keep him. You hope maybe he looks really good, so maybe he becomes a trade chip.
And I like what you said about Deshaun Watson. In fact, when I sent my tweet out, about the trade when it first happened, I said if Deshaun Watson is even 75% of what Deshaun Watson was, then the Browns could have a really potent offense here. This could be a fun team to watch this season.
It could be a fun team if Njoku keeps on going the way he started going last year. And he's a guy who needs consistency. But if he even comes close or even builds on what he was doing last year, then they've got the wide receivers, they got the tight end, of course they got Chubb back there. And so Cleveland's offense might just be supersonic.
I agree. Yeah, the Njoku thing, he finally last year looked like the potential superstar tight end that we saw. We saw it.
Not the guy that you pick up and he catches 3 passes.
Yeah, right. And then he gets hurt, and then they're talking about trading him, and he's asking for trades. And then remember too, though, at tight end, they also brought in Jordan Akins, who was the top tight end in Houston, and the Houston tight end situation will come up in a minute. Yeah. But Akins, a guy who has played with Watson before, has so now they have a 3-deep tight end room between Njoku, Akins, and Harrison Bryant, who, remember, won the Mackey Award in college as the best tight end and has looked pretty good in the NFL. He's a little undersized, but they've got a deep wide receiver room now. They've got a deep tight end room. They've still got Nick Chubb. There's still the possibility they bring back Kareem Hunt. He's still out there on the market. And if not, they have a recent draft pick who they're really high on in Jerome Ford. Plus, they've got Watson. But like I said, I agree with you. If Watson is even 75% of what we have seen Deshaun Watson be, this could be potent. I agree that Cooper is the number one and has to be the number one.
It has to be number one. He has to catch 90 balls.
You look at last year's numbers. Amari Cooper was, whether anybody, remembers this or not, or noticed or not, Amari Cooper was wide receiver 10 in fantasy last season.
Right.
Wide receiver 10 overall.
Could have gotten later in the draft and really got value out of
You
that.
could have got him for a song, and he was wide receiver 10 with Jacoby Brissett
playing 12 games or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I agree. Amari Cooper is the number one. It has to be the number one. Donovan Peoples-Jones had a good year last year for his, perspective. He's still a young guy. Donovan Peoples-Jones has only been in the league for 3 years. Now, last year was by far his best year. It was his highest usage that he's had. It's the first time he had 20 targets and 58 targets his first 2 years in the league. He had 96 last year. So, I mean, he obviously is still coming into his own. He is only
Right.
24 years old. But now they get Eli Moore. And like you
If
said,
they've got Eli Moore, then maybe he doesn't get 96 targets.
and he might not,
You know
but
what I mean? These targets got to go somewhere. So
I think that what they can count on, or what you can expect for Moore, though, I think Cooper and Peoples-Jones are outside receivers. I think they are true wideouts. I think Moore for them.
Yeah.
Moore's a little smaller. I mean, he's only 5'10". I think he's like 100 bucks 78 or something like that. I mean, Crimey's I outweigh him.
Me too.
Which, I mean, hey, look, but I think Moore fits in the slot for them. And so I think that you're talking about a guy who they don't necessarily need to operate and take. He's not going to take away Peoples-Jones's position on the field, but like you said, maybe he might draw some targets now.
He might,
if he becomes a legitimate
they're going to
star.
have to decide: are they playing a 3 wide receiver offense, or are they deciding to play a 2 tight end offense?
Go 12 personnel? Are they going to go 11? Yep, I agree there.
And so
but they've got the option.
we're going to need to see before we can come to any kind of conclusion about who's going to benefit most, because we don't know what kind of offense they're going to run.
You look at Eli Moore, and he had such an exciting finish to his rookie season. Now, I mean, over the last 7 games of his rookie season in 2021, he scored 17.6 fantasy points per game. He had 35 catches, 472 yards, scored 6 touchdowns. One of them was a rushing touchdown even. He ran a 4.3 240.
And those 6 touchdowns were the only touchdowns he had the whole season.
Right, but it was the last 7 games when he actually was getting
that just
used.
Showed the kind of explosiveness that he does have.
So we know that potential is there. Now, last year, for whatever reason, and like you said, he had the Jets quarterbacks thrown to him, and the Jet quarterback last year was like 5 different dudes all kind of cycling through and pretending to be a quarterback.
Threw for 1.5 yards per attempt, or whatever that crazy stat was.
Right, and there's a reason that they are trying to bring in Aaron Rodgers. And not just like every team would love to have Aaron Rodgers. No, these people are trying to bring him in, right? There's a reason they're desperate to pick up a guy who is filled with drama and maybe on the last year or two of his career, because they didn't have anything there last year.
Right. And that just goes to show what happens to a franchise when you make a quarterback selection and it blows up in your face.
Right.
And then your franchise is set back for years.
Exactly.
And, they took Wilson, and he's embarrassing Wilsons throughout the land. And so it didn't work out. It has not worked out. And what are they going to do with him now that if they do bring in Aaron Rodgers?
Right. The talk is that they have not given up on him, but I think he was definitely a contributor or lack thereof in terms of contribution to Moore's down year last season. So when you combine the fact that he has had such a terrible quarterback situation and that tantalizing end to 2021, this is a guy that, I mean, you can criticize Cleveland all you want for one, and not you, but the colloquial you.
Well,
you can criticize Cleveland all you want for trading away
some criticism of Cleveland,
right?
Since
regardless,
1998 or whatever year it was that they 2000, whatever it was that they came back into the league,
right?
But
for trading away a 2nd round pick to get a guy like Eli Moore, like I said, who's 23,
they better be convinced.
This is not, but this is not a guy though that's like, you're not trading a 2nd round pick for a guy who's 37 years old. And I mean, they didn't trade him for a guy who's on the way out. Eli Moore at 23 could still have just as long a career as half the guys that are coming out this season. He's got 2 years left on his contract. You only owe him $1.5 million and $1.9 million over those 2 years. This is a very affordable contract, a young enough guy, and a guy with enough to get you excited. I'm okay with them giving up a 2nd round pick for this guy. If this was the kind of guy you were going to get with your 2nd round pick this year,
pick anyway, that's a good point. You
go. Boom.
And so, if they're convinced that he's that guy, then Okay, but he's going to have to be that guy.
He's
to
a
justify
guy
a
that
second-round pick.
you're going to want to watch the buzz leading into the year around him.
That's right.
Because in redraft, if this move gets forgotten by next week, which some people maybe already has been, if this move gets forgotten and they move on, you could probably get him pretty cheap in redraft format.
Absolutely.
And it with a possibility of paying off pretty big time, right? But I agree with you completely in Dynasty. I want to hang on to this because this has the potential to go somewhere. I wasn't necessarily dumping him anyway because of his age.
You can't dump a guy that's 23 in Dynasty.
But I mean, now that he's got a much better situation, which seems weird to say that anywhere is Cleveland's a much better situation than anywhere, but he's in a much better situation right now and a much better chance to succeed. So I really like this move. Let's move on. The next thing I wanted to look at is actually two moves, but same team. So we'll talk about them both. And your cat shows up just in time to talk about the Cats.
Just in time to talk about the Panthers.
Just in time to talk about the Carolina Panthers. Carolina Panthers bring in Adam Thielen and DJ Chark. Now obviously they traded away DJ Moore to the Bears to pick up that overall number 1 pick in the draft this season, but they replaced one DJ with another. Apparently they're big on that around there. Apparently DJ Chark and Adam Thielen. Now, these two guys project to be, at least as the team is currently constructed, these two guys project to be their top 2 wide receivers. Adam Thielen obviously has been a top guy before. He's been a great fantasy guy. He's been a very consistent player, but he's obviously on the downswing of his career.
Not recently.
Obviously on the downswing of his career. DJ Chark, on the other hand, is one of those guys that we've seen flash ability and flash talent and flash fantasy usability, but doesn't seem like he's ever fully grabbed a hold of what he's capable of.
And it's kind of weird because the Lions were blowing the doors off the place in the offense a year ago, and he still wound up with 30 catches.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's not convincing me at all. And then he had 22 the year before that. And you have to go clear back to 2019 where he had 1,008 yards receiving.
With the Jaguars.
The
only thing that I would say about this is that I like the idea. They are obviously targeting a quarterback at number 1.
Obviously.
We don't know who. There's been the talk. Is it? Yeah, exactly. Stroud, Young, we don't know who, but they are obviously targeting a quarterback at number 1 there. So they're going to try and bring a young guy in on a team that was not great last season, but they have completely retooled their skill positions on that team. They bring in Hayden Hurst at tight end, who's the best tight end they've had maybe since Greg Olson's early years. They bring in Miles Sanders to replace Dante Foreman. And they also, but they bring in Thielen, they bring in Clark. Now, Thielen last season, a down year, a year that everybody was kind of ragging on Thielen for, 70 catches on 107 targets.
Oh, I wouldn't rag on him. That's just,
But the talk around the industry
from a fantasy perspective, if you put any kind of eggs in that Thielen basket, you were feeling this
is a guy on the decline by everybody's measurement in fantasy.
He hasn't had more than 74 catches in the last 3 years.
No, but 70 catches, 107 targets, 716 yards, 6 touchdowns
6
still.
TDs, so that rescues his fantasy value just a little bit.
180 fantasy points.
Year before that, so he can still get in the end zone.
180 fantasy points last season. DJ Moore, who they just got rid of, who everybody kind of universally acknowledges as a number 1 type guy. DJ Moore had 199 points for this team last year.
I'm well aware of that because I had him on my team.
So, I am by no means suggesting.
I guess I like to commit, some sort of, personal bodily injuries or something. Because I've drafted him 2 years in a row now.
Yeah, no.
And so I'm off the DJ Moore train because he's not going to, target me 3 years running.
You might be jumping off at the wrong time. I mean, we don't
Might
know what
be.
he'll be, but
Might be.
I
Might
can't blame
be.
you. I've had guys like that too, where you're like, geez, why do I continue to jump on this guy
Right.
year after
No
year
one
after
that
year?
you're just going to wind up, splashing hot acid into your face, and you don't want that.
But the bringing in Adam Thielen, though, he obviously still has NFL ability to offer. Now,
Right, he
fantasy
does.
wise,
For
I'm not
everybody
big
else.
on him, but where I like this move, fantasy wise, is for whomever ends up playing the quarterback there, because they are bringing in that veteran. I like it regular football wise. I like it fantasy football wise too, because I think you've brought in a guy who will be a nice, even as the number one, he can option. He can be that safety blanket option for this guy coming in. Adam Thielen still knows how to run routes. He's going to be where you expect him to be.
How to do that.
He's going to work the right way. He's going to show this guy how to work. And he's going to be able to lead that wide receiver room from a personality standpoint, from a I've been there, I know how to do it standpoint. DJ Chark is not old. He's been in the league for a while, but both of these guys, if you want, you have to take DJ Moore out of the equation, because DJ Moore is out of the equation now.
Right.
Both of these guys, even with that year you mentioned from Chark, only 30 catches, they would have been the top two receivers on Carolina last season based on their numbers from last season.
That's not saying a whole lot.
No, but I mean, but they have done what they can do to replace the guy that they lost.
And so if they wind up catching, let's say, 70 balls apiece,
mm-hmm.
they're in good shape.
Mm-hmm.
They're in good shape. And then, you mentioned about Miles coming over there, because as terrible as they were a year ago, the Carolina running game, you got something out of their running game.
Yeah.
So he could come in there. So if these two guys can catch the balls, the running game, I think that he's going to have a decent year, even though he's probably lamenting the fact he's no longer on the Eagles. Right. And Carolina is obviously not going to the playoffs, except for maybe because they're in the worst division in football. But still, he's going to have a good year, I think. And if he has a good year and these guys catch the balls and the rookie doesn't look like he's overwhelmed, this all could work out pretty well for Carolina.
Right. It's a team that has an offensive line that's kind of middle of the pack, but is maybe ascending. And like you said, they were effective running the football last year. If they could be effective running this year with Miles,
they could turn around and give the ball to.
Yeah.
And they both.
Chuba Hubbard. Now they've got Miles
Chuba
Sanders.
Hubbard and Donta Foreman.
Yep.
Both were effective running backs, both in real and fantasy.
And let's keep in mind, too, that their presumed number 3 guy, who's their top return guy, I should say, not returner, but returning guy, their top returning receiver, Terrace Marshall Jr., is only 22 years old. He's a second-round pick himself, and he's only 22 years old. He's younger than some of the guys coming out in the draft this year. So, I mean, they've still got young talent there to grow with and connect with whomever they bring in to be a starter. I just think these are two. I think that Carolina has made some really intelligent, savvy moves in terms of getting themselves back to respectability quickly. It's a winnable division.
Right.
Even with a rookie quarterback, it's a winnable division.
These guys don't break the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So they could work out. And
you're not tied to these guys forever.
If the quarterback works out. And
I agree with you. I like that.
Depending on a rookie quarterback is iffy at best in the best of scenarios. So,
but I mean, if the guy can even just receive snaps and, like you said, hand off to Miles Sanders and occasionally get the ball out, they're going to be better I think they could be better this year, even with the rookie quarterback, which is weird. And they may not be a great team. And everybody's saying
that division's a great team.
They gave away their first round pick next year, and the Bears might end up with number 1 overall pick next year. I don't know that they end up with a number 1 overall.
No,
I don't think that pick would probably still be a top 10 pick.
That's quite possible.
But
maybe even
this is a team that's making moves to ensure their long-term health. they're
Long-term
not tied
health,
to
and that the fans give a flying crap about the team,
right.
right? Because they're trying, to build something, and
Yeah,
they
they're
have
trying to
not
build.
been anything since they went to the Super Bowl,
No,
right? Cam Newton flamed out with the brightest of lights, and they have not been able to find anyone back there since he left town.
no, they definitely have not.
And he came back, and the magic was not there. So, and he could throw 65-yard passes on pro days or whatever else he did the other day, but Cam Newton,
Cam,
just
yeah,
stay
listen,
home, Cam. All right.
there are plenty of guys, and I know we all make, those we all get psyched up. Oh, guy threw it 65 yards in the air. That's not easy. But there are a lot of guys in the NFL that if they're allowed to just wind up, they're warmed up and they can just toss the damn thing as far as possible, can make a throw that far. And when everybody's running around in shorts and t-shirts, it's not the biggest thing in the world to make a downfield connection with a receiver, especially an NFL caliber wide receiver like these guys assumedly are if they're at a pro day for the draft. If you've watched Cam Newton throw at any point in the last several seasons in a game,
he couldn't throw it from here to there. My wife's sitting on the couch over there. He couldn't throw it over there.
No, he's kind of shot putting it from the sidearm, and it kind of comes out.
And here comes your 6'8", defensive lineman. That's just not happening.
There's been no zip on that ball the last several years that he's actually played. He's not throwing over
Patriots,
the top.
That was disastrous. And then
Cam Newton's 18 and a half feet tall. If he throws over the top, there's nobody in the league that should be able to block a pass from him. But yeah, he's kind of shot putting it almost from the shoulder in games. Maybe he's rehabbed past that. I don't know. Shoulder doesn't seem like the kind of thing you change. I'm not big on him, but yeah, no, they are set to have their best quarterback situation in years. They are building an offense around him. They've got a line in front of him. They've brought in good quality veteran guys who can kind of be a cushion as this dude lands in the NFL. And going forward, then they've still got freedom to add some young guys. And I like what they're doing in Carolina to try and right this ship. I really do.
Yep, I agree with that 100%.
So between the two of them, Thielen and Chark, is there anybody you would be willing? Is there either of them that you'd be willing to take a chance on? Not dynasty wise, redraft wise.
Redraft. If Thielen, he's still got that name recognition. I think that some people would probably take him earlier than he probably should go. But DJ Chark, no one's sitting there going, man, I got to have that guy.
Right.
And so he might be, if he can be the Jacksonville Jaguar version of Chark, and look, I just read it, he had 1,008 yards receiving. If he can do that and you can get him towards the back end of the draft, that's something I would be very willing to do.
What you bring up is a good point there, that because of his name recognition, Thielen might go a little sooner. He might go a little higher than what you want to pay for him.
Right.
Let somebody else pay too much for him.
Adam Thielen.
Yeah, I'm not jumping on the guy. I like the idea of taking a real late flyer on him. But if somebody else is going to overpay for him, okay, have him, because I'm not out anything, right? He probably projects to me. He projects as a wide receiver 4 with 3 upside right now.
Right. But someone's going to take him higher than that. I guarantee
someone will see the name.
Right now, someone out there in the fantasy realm, maybe those that are not tuned into us at this moment, will take him higher than that.
And I said numbers wise,
2 receiver.
Numbers wise, last season he would have been their number 1 receiver of their currently constructed group. That does not mean, however, like you just kind of alluded to, that doesn't mean that DJ Chark doesn't become their number 1. That doesn't mean he's not their number 1.
He could.
And if you can get Chark late,
which you will be able to do that. Unless
the other possibility,
blows the doors off but nobody blows the doors off in exhibition games,
especially
anymore.
not when they're a starter.
Right.
Yeah. No
So,
starters
yeah,
are racking up numbers. Yeah.
Right. So you can get him later in the draft, and I think there's all kinds of upside there.
He's either one of those like late draft steal potentials, or he profiles as one of those guys that everybody kind of gets down on, forgets about, and then becomes a waiver wire pickup that really becomes kind of a valuable piece. Not like a league winner, but a real valuable piece off the wire once he establishes this connection with whomever's throwing him the ball.
Right. And if he is a legitimate number 2 wide receiver on a team, if you can get somebody like that off the waiver wire, you are really bringing it in.
Right. So we move now from 3 moves that I kind of like from a fantasy standpoint and from a real life football standpoint to a couple of moves that I hate from a fantasy standpoint. In Dalton Schultz and Devin Singletary both signing with the Houston Texans.
Right.
Now, Dalton Schultz coming off a season, 57 catches on 89 targets, 577 yards, 5 scores. He scored over 142 fantasy points in a PPR league. We've seen Dalton Schultz now for the last several years has been a top level tight end. It's not a position where, guys typically shoot the lights out anyway.
Right.
But now he signs with the Texans. Now those numbers that I just brought up to you would have been really good numbers on the Houston Texans last year. We mentioned Jordan Akins is gone. Jordan Akins was their top tight end last season in Houston. He moves on to Cleveland. So now Dalton Schultz steps into that number 1 role. Of the guys that they brought back, they needed to make a move like this. Of the guys that they're bringing back, Tegan Catoriano, Brevin Jordan, who was a massive disappointment last season. I had him ranked as a top 10 tight end coming into the season. I thought they would actually use him. Then they signed O.J. Howard. Then everything went to hell.
Right.
And Mason Schreck. But of the 3 guys that they've still got off of last year's roster, they scored a combined 96.2 fantasy points.
Wow.
Dalton Schultz is by far a better option than what they had going into the season.
I'm a better option than what they had going into the season.
Right? I'm 5'5". I probably was a better tight end option in terms of what they had. But they bring in Dalton Schultz. They've traded away Brandon Cooks. They've signed Robert Woods to
Yeah. Let's
great.
not get get too excited about that.
But Dalton Schultz is kind of like their big ad, essentially. I like that from a football standpoint. I like the idea of a reliable tight end for a brand new. We are assuming, it should be assumed with the number 2 overall pick, that Houston is also targeting a quarterback because the Davis Mills experiment went horribly awry.
If they don't target a quarterback, then they just need to disband the entire franchise.
Just move on, guys. Find another line of work.
That's right.
So I like the idea of Dalton Schultz as a safety blanket for this new tight end, or for this new quarterback. I hate it from the standpoint of it takes a guy that was a reasonably reliable tight end and in a tight end field at a position that has 8,000 questions anyway, and it just adds more questions to it. By now, is Dalton Schultz still going to be Dalton Schultz going forward? What's your take on that? You're closer to it than I am.
As we talked briefly before we came on the air, I was way off on Dalton Schultz a year ago when Dak went down. I went on this very program and said, go out and get Dalton Schultz if you can, because Cooper Rush will be targeting him. Well, guess what? Cooper Rush didn't even look his way.
Nope. And
so the usual thought process is that a young quarterback would like a quality tight end that, if you're getting born, the defensive lineman's bearing down on you, that you've got the safety valve that you can throw it to 10 yards down the field. And so I'm going to kind of lean towards that's what a quarterback will do. Mm-hmm. But Houston's got all kinds of issues all the way around on their team. So they bring in a young guy I'm not sold on the offensive line, and not sold on their offensive weapons anyway. So,
no, not at all.
And so when you're looking at Dalton Schultz, as you mentioned, had 57 catches. The year before, he was fabulous. He had 78 catches. But the year before that, 63. So between 63 and 57 is about what you're looking at, I think, as far as his totals. And so if that's not something that I'm going to – people are going to be out there going, hey, I need a tight end. It happens all the time. People still haven't got the idea. You don't need to spend a whole lot of money to get a tight end because after, Kansas City, they're all pretty much –
unless you're spending that on unless you're spending that capital on Travis Kelce.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Dalton Schultz will come off the board way earlier than I'm willing to take him. And so in fantasy, you can have him. And if you have him on your, on your dynasty team, obviously you are stuck with him because you are. And it might work out, but no one's going to sit there and give you anything for him, especially in this draft when everybody's talking about that there's a lot of quality tight ends coming out.
Right.
So,
there are some top level prospects.
So you can hang out a little bit on the tight end position in redraft and not worry about what Dalton Schultz will or won't do.
I agree completely. I don't like this move for Dalton Schultz's fantasy value yet. Now, maybe I'm surprised. I hope I am. I hope I am for Houston's sake. It's a good move for Houston to make.
For Houston,
it's a great move on the field for the franchise.
For Schultz, he could forget about making the playoffs.
Right? I mean, he's going to get paid, but
he's going to get paid, and maybe that's his priority, and that's fine.
But from a fantasy standpoint, at
that
a
whole
position,
contract, no playoffs.
None. Right. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, right. He'll be going home in January every year.
Right.
You bring up a good point, dynasty wise, that you might be stuck with him because tight end is not the easiest position because of the questions surrounding it.
Right.
And because of there's no long-term stability,
and there's 5 guys worth having in fantasy anyway.
It's not an easy position to trade.
Just hope gives you something.
It's not an easy position to trade. You might be able to snag something if you have backup options at the position. I don't mean backup in terms of like backup caliber. I mean, if you have other options. If you have
somebody on my dynasty team, I've got Cole Kmet.
Right.
As my number 2 tight end.
You've got a Pat Freiermuth. If you've got another option.
If you got one of those guys.
Right. Try and move him. Maybe you'll get somebody to bite on the name recognition.
I doubt
Play up the idea of where he's ranked in the last, couple years and, play up the idea that, he's a top 10 tight end, top 10 tight end, top 10 tight end. You might get somebody to bite on that and give you at least something for it. Right. But top 10
tight end doesn't have the same ring to it as the top 10 running back or top 10 wide receiver.
So now we go from a guy who we know will be the unquestioned number 1 on that team at his position to a guy that we have no idea how this will shake out now going forward under the new coaching regime in Houston. Devin Singletary moves from Buffalo.
Speaking of guys who I had on my fantasy team, so
speaking of guys going from the playoffs to not the playoffs,
to the outhouse,
you're going from the cusp of the Super Bowl and a possible Super Bowl run every year to watching the playoffs and wondering just where they're going to shake out in the top 5 of the draft.
Last name Allen thrown to you, right?
So Devin Singletary signs on,
right? And I would like this if they didn't already have a quality running back there who it's only a second year. And I think that I liked what happened with him last year before, he wound up getting hurt and all that. Mm-hmm. So if he was the number 1 running back, I could buy it.
If either one of them was the number 1. Yeah, and therein lies the rub, my friend. That's the problem. Dameon Pierce, as a rookie, looked like a legitimate number 1 running back. He was looking like a good starting running back. If you had him in Dynasty,
Despite
like
being
I've
on
got
a
3 or
team
4
that's
shares of him.
Terrible. He
I
was
was
running the
loving it.
football.
Yeah. Behind it on offensive line, like you said, that was ranked, I think, at end of season, I think they ranked number 26 on PFF's end of season rankings.
I could
They're
go
not a good line.
outside and get a offensive line together that would rank 26.
Yeah,
So
couple of tipped over trash cans and Laramie Tunsil could block about as well as they did last year.
Right.
But Dameon Pierce, 12.8 fantasy points per game last season. He was looking like a legitimate running back, and you were excited to see what his future was going to be.
Right.
Now they bring in Devin Singletary, who 11.1 points per game on a better team last season. This is not an upgrade in any way, shape, or form.
No, it isn't. Because obviously in Buffalo, they decided, hey, we've got our young running back in place, and he is taking touches away from him. And so what does he do?
James
Goes
Cook
down to
looks
Houston
like
so he can take away touches
from somebody else,
a second-year running back.
James
So
Cook is a receiving, looks like a receiving back in this league. James Cook is not his brother.
No,
he is not Dalvin Cook.
No,
Dalvin Cook can do anything.
Yeah, last year a lot of people were trying to make it sound like he was his brother, which I was never on that train whatsoever. Nope. And but I think coming into his second year, he's got some upside. So
he's set up unless they make some kind of move or make a draft. I've seen Bijan Robinson attached to them. If he falls that far and they jump on him, just get out of Buffalo's way, everybody. But Singletary in Houston, he's small. He's small for a running back.
Right.
He's not as so Pierce is the bigger running back.
Right.
So now you're setting up a situation where now Singletary may become the receiving type running back, and Pierce becomes the early down and the pounder. And either way it draws
away from
that
each other's strengths
from both of them.
Right? Because
exactly.
you look at the numbers, right? The last 2 years, Devin Singletary's averaged 4.6 yards per carry.
Mm-hmm.
You'll take that every time. And he has 12 touchdowns during that time. So if you're going to have him on your team, that's your number one running back. But you already have a number one running back. So if someone from Houston is listening to this show, and call in or whatever and let us know what the thought process was behind doing that.
Yeah. Like I said, again, from a football, from the franchise's standpoint, it's a good one. You brought in a guy who's very talented. And again, a guy who can be very reliable as you transition to a young quarterback who's trying to find his way in this league. And Singletary doesn't preclude Dameon Pierce from becoming what Dameon Pierce looked like he was on a trajectory to be. But Devin Singletary is only 25. This is not an old guy on his way out. This is a guy who wants to be in the league.
He's not
and
old,
can be in the league for a while.
And, it's not like we just mentioned Miles Sanders earlier going to Carolina being, the running back there.
Yeah.
That's not happening with this situation.
No. It's a situation that I've gone from being excited about Dameon Pierce and his fantasy prospects. Right. And I'm still in Dynasty. I still am excited.
On your Dynasty team, this is a move that does not thrill you whatsoever.
And it's a move that makes me want to shy away from either of them, even more so than I maybe already was in redraft.
Right.
I'm not that I was excited about the Houston running back situation. We have to wait and see how healthy Pierce is going to be to start the season.
Right.
But either way, knowing that the two are now going to be coexisting all season in an offense with a rookie quarterback behind a terrible offensive line and a rookie head coaching staff. Yeah. I want to stay far away from that.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'll have a single Texan on my team.
Witch's brew, if there ever was one.
Yeah.
So in either of those, or even redraft or Dynasty, the red alert light is flashing overdrive right now.
I'm holding Pierce in Dynasty on all my rosters.
You have to do that.
But I don't know that I want another Houston Texan on any of my football rosters next year. No. Maybe we get to a point by mid-season where I'm advocating for one or two of these guys DFS wise, but other than that, I'm steering clear of Houston. let's move on. Let's listen to our Manscaped ad here. We'll listen to our good friends over there at Manscaped. When we come back on the other side, we're going to talk this the quarterback landscape and how a certain individual specifically fits into this quarterback landscape.
Spring has sprung, and our friends at Manscaped have the best tools for some spring cleaning. They've already helped you tidy up all the nooks and crannies of your body's basement, but this year, Manscaped can help you get the perfect presentation on that beautiful face with the new Beard Hedger Pro Kit. Make sure you look your best this spring by using code BELLYUP20 to get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. It's time to tame your mane with the Beard Hedger Pro Kit. The sun is peeking back out, which means you'll have to show your face in the daylight again. So use the kit to make sure your scruff looks award-winning, whether you got glorious beard flow or some smooth, sleek cheeks. The kit starts off with the Beard Hedger, a waterproof cordless trimmer with a rotary wheel that gives you 20 hair cutting lengths, all with one guard. So no more messy drawers full of add-ons. It also comes with the titanium-coated T-blades that are tough on hair but smooth on your face, leading to a single-stroke efficiency that brings satisfaction one stroke at a time. The Beard Hedger is a high-tech piece of art in a travel-sized package with a long-lasting battery, universal charging, and a strong motor. So what are you waiting for? Save 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code BELLYUP20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUP20 at manscaped.com. Focus on the face and use the Beard Hedger Pro Kit for the cleanest look in the game.
There we go. All right. Yes, we all know our friends at Manscaped, and one stroke satisfaction comes hand in hand, so to speak. Remember, keep in mind right now, though, that's a new promo code. Now I want to make sure we point that out. Head over to manscaped.com. New promo code BELLYUP20, and that's going to get you 20% off of whatever you order over there. BELLYUP20. That's a new code. But let's look now at the quarterback landscape. Kind of. I covered this now. Several weeks ago, I covered kind of an overview of the quarterback landscape. Much has changed since then. But basically, we know the top two teams in the draft, Carolina and Houston, are both looking quarterback. There's a reasonable expectation that the number 4 team in the draft, Indianapolis Colts, will be looking quarterback with their pick. Now, that's contingent on the guy we're going to bring up in a few minutes here. But past that, you've got Seattle at number 5, who are not locked out of, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could pick a quarterback there, especially since they have another first-round pick coming at pick 20.
Right.
You've got the Las Vegas Raiders at number 7, who could conceivably be looking quarterback, whether that's moving up or just waiting to see if one of the top 4 guys falls to them. Houston picks again at 12, obviously looking quarterback. The Jets picking right now for the moment are picking at 13, and whether or not they get Aaron Rodgers, there is a possibility they could be looking at quarterback. You've got Washington at 16, Tampa Bay at 19, Minnesota at 23, all teams who are kind of in a transitional period or a possible transitional period from a quarterback standpoint too. Kirk Cousins, he's played for 8,000 years on franchise tags and everything else, and no one's been excited to have him. So it's not out of the realm that Minnesota could be looking quarterback should somebody fall far enough where they either want to move up or take him where he falls. You got Baltimore at 22. So there are teams all up and down this first round that are looking for quarterbacks. Now you've got 4 top quarterback prospects that everybody has kind of solidified around and said, these are the guys that are worthy of a first round pick at least. CJ Stroud out of Ohio State, Bryce Young out of Alabama, who had, by all accounts, a fantastic pro day this week. Will Levis out of Kentucky, and Anthony Richardson, the darling of the combine, from Florida. So for teams looking for quarterbacks, those are the 4 guys you're looking at in the draft. But as we just said, there are 3 teams in the top 4 and maybe 4 teams in the top 5 who are looking for quarterbacks. If you're Las Vegas at 7 and anybody past that, there's no guarantee that one of these top 4 guys are going to be there for you at quarterback. So if that doesn't happen, here's the quarterback free agents left on the market that you're looking at who are no strings attached. You could sign him tomorrow and call him your guy. Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, Teddy Bridgewater, and then after that, you're looking at Mason Rudolph, Joe Flacco, Blaine Gabbert, guys like that no one wants. Joe Flacco has been a starter, won a Super Bowl. Good for him. I love the man to death. I'm sure his mother loves him too. But he's 976 years old, and he's not a starting quarterback in this league anymore. Mason Rudolph has never been a starting caliber quarterback.
All you're known for is to get your helmet ripped off your head.
You were bashed in by the best pass rusher in the game.
That's what you're known for, and you've been in the NFL what 4 years now?
Yeah, no, this is not a guy you want starting. Backup,
it's not a guy you probably want. As a crossing guard over by your kid's school. So
I honestly don't have a problem with Mason Rudolph as your number 2. You're not looking at him as a starter. Teddy Bridgewater is at the point in his career, he's not a starter.
No.
As a bridge starter, not to make too much of a joke, as a bridge starter, even that is iffy for Teddy Bridgewater at this point. Matt Ryan, again, 977 years old.
If he couldn't do it last year, then he needs to cancel Christmas.
And Carson Wentz looks like I'm not sure how much longer Carson Wentz will be in the league.
75 years old. So
yeah,
I liked him going into last year.
And then
I thought that he got a raw deal in Indianapolis.
But then the wheels fell off. Yeah.
The wheels completely came off. Front and back wheel.
For about a month, it was like, hey, we got something here. And then he Carson Wentz all over.
Right.
So that's the landscape you're looking at. You're looking at either getting one of these top 4 guys in the draft, or those are the free agents you have available. Except there's one more option out there that's available to most of the teams in the league. And it's Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is on the non-exclusive franchise tag from Baltimore. Now, the non-exclusive franchise tag, this is one of those things. NFL contracts and NFL salary cap things, and I don't find them near as confusing as NBA contracts and NBA. I mean, it seems like every year in the NBA, somebody who hasn't played in the league for 5 years gets traded for another guy who plays in Europe. And I'm like, what's really changing hands here except numbers on the page? And it's really
that's all it is.
Page, right?
And then the player that you draft or you trade for, you wind up, you give him, I'm going to buy you out of your contract. Right. Then he winds up on the Los Angeles Clippers.
And they've got a salary cap that's not a salary cap that doesn't mean anything. And guys can get a maximum contract of so much money with one team and not another. And I'm sure there are other people out there that look at that and think, oh, yeah, no, it makes perfect sense because they know more about it. But for a guy who follows the NFL primarily, I've never understood the NBA financial game. But in the NFL, the non-exclusive franchise tag for the quarterback this season, basically, if Lamar signs it, he comes back to Baltimore 1 year, $32.4 million, and that's locked in. If they had signed him to the exclusive tag, it would have been roughly around $45 million, they believe. But what the non-exclusive franchise tag means is that any offer any team gives him, Baltimore has the right to match or refuse. So if no matter what any team wants to give him for a contract, Baltimore has the right to say, no, we'll do the same thing, and he comes back to Baltimore. If Baltimore decides not to exercise that right, the signing team owes Baltimore their top pick this year in 23, their number 1 pick. It has to be a first-round pick, not just their top pick. It has to be a number 1 pick in 23 and a number 1 pick in 24. So if you're a team like Cleveland who doesn't have a first-round pick in those years, you're out regardless of what your other quarterback situation is. You cannot sign him. So there are about 4 or 5 teams without a pick in the first round. The Dolphins are out because they were shafted their first round pick this year for the Tom Brady buffoonery. But so that's the issue around signing Lamar Jackson. Now we know when Lamar Jackson was franchise tagged, there were like 4 or 5 teams that came out right away and said, nope, not us. We're not in on him anyway. But you're talking about a guy who won the MVP award, has set records as a rusher from the quarterback position, and that's where the position is headed, or already is running type quarterback, guys who are mobile. This is a guy who puts up numbers, puts up wins, and has won an MVP award. And everybody's like, nope, we don't want him at the most important position in the league. What are teams thinking here?
Well, I think that what our team's thinking here is they don't want to give up 2 first-round draft picks for a guy who has not played a full season in the last 2 years and that wants a fully guaranteed contract, and he's not going to get it. And this whole thing is starting to spin out of control because you've got some
Big
guy
time.
running around saying I represent Lamar Jackson, who in fact isn't.
Exactly.
So,
No, you bring that up. Ken Francis is the name you're talking about. A memo from the league came out on Thursday to all
That's
32 teams in the league with Ken Francis's name attached. Said, listen, this guy is not an authorized NFL agent, so you cannot talk to him. Do not talk to him about any player, Lamar Jackson included, contract status, because he's not authorized to negotiate on behalf of a player under the league policies and rules. Ken Francis is a guy I don't know a whole lot about. Apparently he's a Florida man, which is not a good start to the bio anyway. Last anybody knew about him, he was hawking like fitness equipment or something like that. Now, Lamar did come out and refute that and said, no, he's not negotiating for me.
right.
But like you just said, that this thing is spinning out of control
It's
quickly.
spinning out of control because of that. Not just that, but now you've got the NFLPA leader accusing the NFL of collusion,
Right. And it
criminal
sure,
collusion, if
honestly,
I remember the words correctly. And as you just mentioned, there are teams they cannot sign them because they don't have a first-round pick.
Yep.
Then, if I'm the Kansas City Chiefs, collusion, really? I would take a photo of Patrick Mahomes and lay that on the table and turn around and walk away. That's my collusion. All right. If you're Buffalo and you've got Allen, you say, okay. If you're the Seahawks and you just signed Geno Smith to a 3-year deal, I've got nothing for your client, and it's not collusion. So that whole claim is bogus from jump.
The biggest problem with the whole thing is that he remains unsigned, and he's obviously a signable. This is not just one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the league. This is one of the best handful of quarterbacks in the league in terms of guys that you would want to lead your franchise. He's still young for a quarterback. He's obviously got a ton of talent. You make a good point that he's been injury prone, partially because of his playing style.
Right.
But you're talking about a guy at the most important position who is a high level talent, and no one seems to be looking at him.
I don't know if you saw what Mike Martz said about him. Of course, he's the old Rams head coach.
Rams offensive coordinator.
Yep. He simply said, "Hey, not every team is built to be able to bring in a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, because let's just say you're Green Bay, right?
Right.
You've got an offense that a guy that stands there and throws a football.
Mm-hmm.
You're not bringing in Lamar Jackson, even if you could, or not, of course. But that's a classic example of a team right there that's just not your offense. So you're going to bring in Lamar Jackson, give up 2 first-round picks. Now you've got an offense that's not catered to him. What are you
building your offense around Peyton Manning is much different than building your offense around Michael Vick or Randall Cunningham.
Right. It absolutely is. You make a good point. Back in the day of the quarterbacks that we could compare this kind of situation to, and that's exactly the point. And so that restricts that. The fact that he's negotiating his own contract and his mom is chirping in his ear and everything else.
But that's part of the problem, is that we don't know then. Normally, in a normal negotiation, you've got the team on the one side, you've got the player and his agent on the other. And we know that negotiations go back and forth, and we know all the time that one side or the other leaks specific information to try and, pump their side of that negotiation. You're talking about a guy, and Lamar Jackson is a great quarterback. I've never heard anything about him as a person that would tell me he's anything other than a top-level person, a good man, a good person. I don't know anything about his family situation, his mom who keeps popping up in these stories.
Not speculate whatsoever.
I don't know anything about any of that, but I do know that Lamar Jackson has not been trained and educated and experienced as a NFL negotiator on contracts.
Right.
And he doesn't have anyone, it appears, he does not have anyone around him either who is in that situation.
That's right.
So you're going up against the NFL. You're going up against the machine.
They've been doing this their whole lives, and they're, Harvard educated or whatever it is, Stanford and all this other kind of stuff.
They know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing, and they'd be more than happy to give you a contract where you think you're signing, something. Well, you'll get that if, you die tomorrow or something.
I understand the sentiment. I understand the sentiment of, Lamar, you go out and get your own and do your own thing and not have to pay an agent money to do that for. I understand that sentiment. The problem with it is what we're seeing right now. This is a guy who should not be unsigned and should not have this level of chaos around him at this point.
Should never have gotten.
He should be on a team,
right?
He should be on a team. He should arguably be on the Ravens right now with no questions asked and preparing for a Super Bowl run.
And we've seen, like a couple years ago with the whole Dak scenario, right? And they've signed him, they to the franchise deal, and he was upset and everything else, and then they franchised him again, and he was upset again, and all this other kind of stuff. But then finally, because he has an agent, they came to a deal.
Right.
And
it's over, and they've moved on, and he's unquestionably their guy right now, and he's done well. He's had a good when he's been healthy, he's had a good run. Yeah, and Jerry Jones is the weird half of that whole equation. But like you just said, he had an agent, a deal got done, Dak got money, no one felt it was unfair, and the team has moved on, and the team knows what they can and can't do contract-wise with everybody else on the team. They know where they stand moving forward. Right now, the Baltimore Ravens don't know if they have $32.4 million to spend.
Because they don't know anything.
They have $32 million out of a $200-some million salary cap. A seventh of their salary cap is tied up right now in limbo because they don't know if they have it to spend or not. Right. And so that hurts them. Right.
It hurts them big time because if you are the Ravens, let's say for a minute that he did sign an offer sheet somewhere, right? And then the Baltimore Ravens didn't match it. They've got no quarterback. They've got nothing. What are they going to do? Like you just said, these names that we mentioned that, older than, Pintos, that came out in the 1970s.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Especially because none of these guys who are available can run anywhere near a Lamar Jackson. Speaking of contrast in styles, you don't get a bigger contrast in style than Lamar Jackson and Matt Ryan. They are opposite ends of the spectrum.
No, the guy couldn't, get
that's
out.
AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene
from the pocket. So no,
no, they are opposite ends of the spectrum.
And let's say, okay, all these guys, the four guys we mentioned at the top of the draft. By the time Baltimore's on the clock, you can cancel Christmas on that. They're not getting any of those dudes.
Baltimore doesn't pick till 22.
So what are you going to do? Go out and get Stenson, who's like 48 years old already?
Stetson Bennett. Yeah.
Right. So,
who's old for a quarterback prospect. Yes.
Right. And so this whole situation is hamstringing both Lamar Jackson, and it's hamstringing Baltimore. But I don't see any conclusion, right? One way or the other.
The one team that has popped up,
Talk about Atlanta?
No, actually, I'm talking about Indianapolis.
Okay.
Atlanta came out early and said, no,
Right.
We're out.
They,
We're out.
they got 78 quarterbacks in there.
Right.
Room, so.
They've also got an owner who's wacky enough and crazy enough that he might just decide to tell Chris Ballard, their GM, do it, pull the trigger, do it. I don't know. Indianapolis maybe could do it. If you put Lamar there, he's got Jonathan Taylor now behind him as a running back, great running back. So now you're talking about one of the top 5-ish quarterbacks in the league and definitely a top 5 level talent at running back in the backfield. You're talking about they've got Jelani Woods, who looked great last season at tight end, who looks like a very good rookie. He looked like a very good rookie and has a very big future at 6'7" at tight end. You've got now they've got some receivers, but they don't necessarily have, in my opinion, they don't necessarily have that guy that strikes absolute fear into your heart. From the standpoint of an opposing team. I mean, Michael Pittman Jr. is a very good wide receiver.
Yes.
Yeah. Is he yet on the level of the Devontae Adams types and those where he strikes that fear into your heart? They lost Paris Campbell. Alec Pierce looked good in flashes, but they need probably another receiver or so. But you put Lamar on that team, that again in a winnable division.
That's right.
Looks like a pretty good team. Now, what would preclude them from doing that? Their pick this year, I mean, you're talking about that'd be the number 4 overall pick this season. They'd be giving up. That's probably wherein their hesitation lies. Because you give up a number 4 pick this year. Next year's pick, probably more of a mid-round pick than that, if you grab Lamar. But giving up that number 4 pick, but in my opinion, you're going to try and get your number 1. You're going to try and get your quarterback of the future with the number 4 pick anyway.
Right.
Why not grab
Lamar
a guy
Jackson is still young enough where he'll play, maybe as many years as the guy you took at number 4 anyway.
Period. Plus, he's established, he can play in this league. As much as awesome as CJ Stroud and Bryce Young and Will Levis and Anthony Richardson look, as awesome as they look, there is no guarantee. In fact, there's a probability that one or more of them will not end up being
probably will putt.
Right. So there's no guarantee. Whoever you get, especially when you're sitting at 4, 2 of those guys are gone already. So now you're picking from the 2 that are left. The only difference in taking that guy versus trading that pick and next year's pick away for Lamar is that you're paying that guy a rookie contract for the next 5 years.
Right. Where you're paying
as opposed to Lamar, you're paying premium money for the next 5. You're paying Lamar premium money for the next 3-4 years, at least. I don't know what Lamar Jackson's looking for. I think everybody speculates that he wants Deshaun Watson type money guaranteed. If the number he tweeted out at one point, $133 million a year from the Ravens was true, that would put his average annual value at around, something like $44.3 million per year, whereas Watson's contract guarantees him $46 a year. So you're in the ballpark there at $133 for 3 years. But we don't know if that's true or not, and we don't know necessarily what he is looking for. Is he looking for something close to Deshaun Watson? Is he looking for something exactly like Deshaun Watson? Is he looking to beat Deshaun Watson? Does he want a Patrick Mahomes type contract with $500 million on the
guaranteed deal, though?
Yeah, like
that's as simple as it comes. And NFL teams first of all, they don't give fully guaranteed deals. And as we mentioned,
Watson thing was a complete
look into the
outlier.
Cleveland Browns for stability and making decisions is not a good plan.
That was a complete outlier from a desperate franchise who hasn't had a quarterback since Bernie Kosar retired.
So, don't bring up the Cleveland Browns as an argument to prove a point at any time. So, and then the other guy that Minnesota and Kirk Cousins,
Yeah.
that's kind of worked out for them.
Yeah.
You know, they made the playoffs, and it wasn't Kirk Cousins' fault that their defense was absolute god awful from jump. And he's been decent, but that's not somebody you're going to give $44 million to.
There's a team in Minnesota that hasn't been brought up in this whole thing. They've got Kirk Cousins, but there's a team where if you put Lamar Jackson on that team, and you're pairing Lamar Jackson now with their running back core, and I know that that's all up in the air with Dalvin Cook getting older and Madison being brought back on a contract, but with Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson, I mean, that'd be, and they're already paying their quarterback that big time money. But what's your best bet? What's your best guess right now on Lamar? Does he stay with Baltimore? Does he not? And if not, where?
My best guess is that despite all the rhetoric and the hot air and the smoke and everything else, he's still going to wind up on Baltimore. And he may not be happy, but he's going to get paid this year.
There you go.
And I don't see any other team, maybe like you said, Indianapolis, that's a good point. If they make a move, then Indianapolis is the only other team I could see that possibly could do something like this.
Yeah.
Because
a team that needs one
that
that is in position to.
Picks. Nobody else wants to sign him to a guaranteed contract. Nobody else, wants to mold their offense around a guy that their team's not ready for that.
This is why you sign an agent as a player. Because teams right now, the overarching model in the league right now is to hit on that young quarterback and have his rookie contract for 5 years and use that money to build around him.
Examples of that.
As opposed to paying Aaron Rodgers $376 billion a minute.
Yeah, exactly. Because look at the hometown Seattle Seahawks. Okay, when they won the Super Bowl, Russell Wilson was on his first year deal.
That they were the
when they went the next
prototypical
year, he was still on his 1 year deal. After that, they signed him. After he sent out vibes at midnight or whatever.
Couldn't afford to pay the Legion of Boom anymore.
Yeah. Yep. Couldn't afford to pay it, and they have not been back to the Super Bowl since.
No.
And that's 10 years now. Just about.
No, right? I tend to agree with you. So, I think that if Lamar, I think Lamar ends up back in Baltimore this season. My best bet, if I had to put money on it this season, he ends up back there. I don't know that there's a possibility or a probability of a long-term deal anymore with them.
No,
he may tell them to piss off.
Yeah, they're not going to have a love fest like the Cowboys and Dak. That's not in the cards.
So either way, it's a rough situation to watch. It should be interesting as we run up to the draft here to see how it all plays out. Baltimore is not currently in position to pick a high-level quarterback in that draft. No. They're falling back on Tyler Huntley if not. It'll be an interesting situation to watch play out. That's going to do it for us today, though. Kevin, why don't you tell us what you got going on here over at BellyUpFantasySports.com and where we can find you and what's going on in the future.
Well, there's a whole lot going on as you are well aware that the Thursday is the start of the Major League Baseball season, and so tonight Vince and I have our fantasy baseball show. Then on Tuesday, it's not a fantasy show. It's a straight up baseball show, the Belly Up Baseball Super Show, getting ready to go. And so I'll be involved in that. And last week, as you participated with the draft, and I put out an article recapping that draft. So there's a lot of people that are drafting today for the season, and so you get over there and take a look at that, and you could see what actually happened and who took what and what my analysis of that pick was. And I don't know if you saw that, but I gave you a slam dunk because you.
No, I did. So, thank you.
And I also talked about in that article what my strategy was going into that article, and it did not pan out the way I had planned it to do.
Like Mike Tyson said, everybody got a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Right. And I got punched in the mouth when the third round came around because there was a guy I was targeting in that round that I didn't take a first, in the first round. I didn't take a first baseman
Right.
because I thought Paul Goldschmidt. Every mock draft I did, I got Paul Goldschmidt in the third, but
didn't
did
work
not
that
happen
way
in reality. So you might want to get over there and take a look at that. And I'm going to have an article coming out now that we're past the post draft, and you've seen all these players that are hurt already, including Reese Hoskins and guys like that.
That was a big blow this week. Yeah,
it was a big blow. He's already down for the season, and some of these other guys are going on injured lists and stuff. So what are you going to do? Who are you going to pick up? I've got an article that will address that very topic.
excellent. Yeah, be on the lookout for dynasty, for football wise. Be on the lookout for dynasty content and draft run up here coming up from me and from everybody else over there. But like Kevin said, head on over to bellyupfantasysports.com. Check out all of Kevin's articles, Vince Stover's articles, Ian Lemersal's articles.
Yeah,
a lot of great stuff to get you ready
over there on baseball. So
it's the witching hour for fantasy drafts.
It is.
Baseball starts, like you said, Thursday. So there are a lot of last second ones that are coming up, but this is it. So if you need that information, if you're cramming for a last second draft here, get on over to bellyupfantasysports.com, check that out and get yourself some of that free content over there. Also, like he said, check out the Belly Up Fantasy Sports, or not Belly Up Fantasy Sports, the Belly Up Sports Baseball Super Show coming up Tuesday night. I'll be a part of that myself.
Yep. I'll be representing my Dodgers. All right.
There you go.
You know that. And apparently the Rangers as well. So,
well, I'll be talking on National League Central over there, so I'll be talking about the Brewers, but everybody else in that division as well. Should be a fun division this season coming up. Should be a great year. I'm looking forward to it. But like you said, it starts on Thursday, so we are in the 11th hour in terms of that.
Yep, definitely the home stretch.
Until then, we are going to bid you all adieu. We thank you for joining us here. Join us here back here again. Same bat time, same bat channel next season or next week, should say. And until then, check everything out over there. BellyUpFantasySports.com, the Belly Up Baseball Super Show Tuesday, and we will see you next time. Slán Живá.